Going Under, Internships Are Heck is a roguelike dungeon crawler action game where you play as Jackie, a new intern at Fizzle, a Silicon Valley startup that sells flavored soda water that is somehow different or connected to Wi-Fi or some nonsense. The game follows many of the tropes of parodies of Silicon Valley startups, and that's the central focus of the game. While the dungeon crawling makes up the gameplay loop, a lot of the game is spent talking to coworkers, working through drama, and other added story beats for the game. If you were to focus solely on the gameplay for Going Under, I think it's a totally competent dungeon crawler. There are 3 main dungeons to progress through, and each one has different enemies to fight with different sub-bosses and bosses to defeat at the end. It's all a pretty standard setup. There are some unique and fun mechanics, like you can practically use anything in the rooms as a weapon. Since the dungeons are styled after startup offices, this provided some fun humor. You can use yoga balls, vertical monitors, keyboards, pencils, and staplers as weapons. You can also use swords, guns, and maces for weapons too, all of which are far better than any of the office equipment. And I think that's kind of the central problem of this game. It offers some unique mechanics and options and challenges, but the easiest way to actually make progress in the game is much more boring. The basic setup is you get the sword and you stab the things around you. That's it. Added to this is that you can unlock power-ups from the very beginning. I unlocked early on a power-up where you constantly have a chainsaw rotating around me doing damage if enemies get too close. There are some ranged enemies and weapons that you can use as a player, but for the most part it's melee only. This means I constantly had damage being dealt to enemies practically the entire time, also knocking them away, which led to extra defense for me as well. Just felt very overpowered. I'm not sure if I just got lucky by getting this power up and using it for my entire run through, or if the game's just easy, but I was able to essentially sprint through this game. I've played a good number of roguelike games now at this point. Goner, Enter the Gungeon, Risk of Rain, Scourgebringer, Dead Cells, Exit the Gungeons, the Dead Cells spin-off thingy, Wizard of Legend, Neon Abyss, Underminer, Rad, Neon Chrome, West of Dead, Hades, etc., etc., etc. I love these types of games. Most of those games that I just listed off, I never actually beat them. The ones that I did beat, it took me a very long time to get to that point. Going Under never had a dungeon that took me more than 3 runs to beat. Now, I don't think that's because I'm some sort of god-tier gamer. I just think the game is easy. There's a bonus level challenge stage at the end with an imposter version of yourself to fight. I did not do that, but I beat the main portion of the game with barely dying. Maybe I'm just a masochist because I'm used to these kind of games kicking the shit out of me, but I was a little disappointed in how easy this game turned out to be. But maybe that's a shallow complaint. Maybe it's actually a good thing that this is a game you can beat without sinking months of your life into it. But I was a little ticked off. I wanted more, I guess, from the final boss or even the middle tier bosses. Midway through the game, you cause your company to go out of business, which means you get sent into the underworld and become a dungeon yourself, which is like a metaphor for going out of business. Whoa, crazy, getting sent to hell, whatever. This means you have to replay through all the dungeons again, but with harder enemies and bosses. Suddenly, I understood. I was playing the easy, casual portion of the game. At least, that's what it seemed like, but that was a lie. The second section through the dungeons was also not very hard. I never lost to a boss, and I never really struggled. It just made it feel kind of pointless. Also, the storyline got kind of annoying, like really fast. So you're this flavored soda startup, and you're a new intern hired on to complete all the mundane tasks and hopefully get your foot in the door. The game says a lot about corporate culture where your main boss turns out to be evil, using demonic relics to try to ensure your company's future until you anime battle him with a samurai sword to stop him. It says a lot about sexism in the workplace, with the women being the smart, talented ones and the male management being dumb, blockhead, frat boy goons. It has representation of marginalized people. It has goofy jokes, over-the-top characters, and lots of puns. All of those elements sound fine and fun and cool, but I actually kind of just hated it. The workplace comedy has risen to the top of our cultural world. I think we can largely point to The Office for this. It was not the first workplace comedy. Cheers is technically a workplace comedy, so is MASH. But it satirized the modern workplace in a way that rung true with so many people that it has stuck around in our cultural zeitgeist for much longer than most people anticipated. I mean, personally, I think over half the seasons are not good at all, but that's neither here nor there. The blending of sitcom, satire, and mockumentary format clearly strikes a chord in people all over the country. It's insanely popular, even though it went off the air 8 years ago, 9 years ago, who even fucking knows? A podcast about the show is one of the top podcasts in the world, for God's sake. Silicon Valley, Office Space, Superstore, Parks and Rec, and many other shows find the same rhythm when they are mocking some aspect of our capitalistic workspaces. Going Under is trying to do the same thing, but in a video game format. It's mixing dungeon crawling and workplace comedy, but it just doesn't work. I don't like any of the characters. I don't associate them with my own experience in the workplace. I do not relate to them, feel bad for them, or care about them at all. I mostly just wanted them to go away. Not enough lessons are learned throughout the game. Even when shit is literally falling into hell and the business is literally going under, roll credits, they can still only bicker with each other. I guess that's maybe how a lot of workplaces in America work, but it just isn't fun to play through. All of them are bossy know-it-alls, and all of them just suck. All the over-the-top references to startup culture gets tiresome as well. You get references to Steve Jobs and Apple, Amazon, Google, Uber, Fiverr, Tinder, Bitcoin. These references occur so frequently that it stops being fun, and it honestly just kind of fades into the background of the game. No longer do the jokes land, and instead they just pass you right by. All the characters suck, so the storyline in general is just not very much fun. It did make me laugh when Marv, who's like your small-time manager, shows up as a bigger, badder anime boss near the end of the game. I thought that was funny just because it was a ridiculous trope in video games that happens too often, and yet this had the twist of a corporate ladder climbing tied into it as well. But everything else left me going, meh. The gameplay itself was largely fun. It had chaos, a little skill involved, nice dodging and movement. The graphics were stylized into looking goofy. They were fine, but everything looked like it was made out of balloons. The weapons and abilities were supposed to make each run unique, but I didn't do enough runs to feel like this game had a lot of depth to make it worth it, because I beat the game so fast. For instance, I've played Enter the Gungeon for hundreds of hours, and I'm still finding new shit. That's the ultimate joy of roguelike games because of how much they have to offer. Going Under does not have that, which is a little disappointing because it feels like it could have it, but it just isn't there. But, oh well. It was fun enough for the time I spent with it. Bye.